What's up, ghosts? Jake here with the Moonlit Ghost. I have some awesome news. I have a couple of patrons. Shout out to Joseph Slinker, who does camera reviews and awesome exploration videos. They're really incredible. Links in the description. Also, shout out to Just Jackie. Thank you for becoming a ghost. I appreciate it more than you know. It means a lot. And that means that both Joe and Jackie will get early access to my deep dive investigation videos. And speaking of my investigation videos, I'm hard at work on the Marble Mountain Bigfoot video. Make sure you stay tuned for that. Also, make sure that you like this video right now. That helps out more than you think. Let's get this video to 40 likes. And make sure that you subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. So you might notice that you don't always get notified when I upload a video. That's because if you just hit the subscribe button once, it defaults to personalized notifications, which doesn't let you know every time I upload. So please, after you've subscribed, go right over to the bell icon right now and click all notifications. This will help me out so much. You have no idea. Without further ado, let's get into it. We all know about the world-famous hauntings. The horror of the Amityville house shocked us to our core. The Stanley Hotel, seriously, it creeps us out, and we are endlessly attracted to the mystery and romance of the Queen Mary. But there are a lot of lesser-known haunts out there in the world with interesting backstories that deserve to be told as well. One in particular near to where I live is of value. The old paper mill has a long and wistful history, and it begins in 1881. Under the direction of Henry Grow and utilizing some of the granite left over from constructing the Latter-day Saint Temple in Salt Lake City, the Deseret News, a key institution of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, began construction on what is now referred to as the Old Paper Mill. It was finished 2 years later in 1883, and currently it sits in ruins on the hills leading up to the mountains in Cottonwood Heights. It sits as a hollowed out shell of a building, stirring the imaginations of any who drive the long winding road leading up to it and those who live nearby. Many have claimed to see shadowy figures looming in the windows, or lights flickering on and off at night throughout the structure, even though no electricity is hooked up to the place. Others claim to hear the faint barking of a dog emanating from the structure at night, echoing in our ears as an ethereal remnant of some long distant time. It sits night after night on the hill, instilling in those nearby a lonely feeling as stories or rumors or tales of people who've struggled and died in the building continue to this day. When it was operational, however, it boasted some of the best paper-making equipment, and the restored Church of Jesus Christ spared no expense. In fact, it produced upwards of 5 tons of paper a day. It was one of the best operations around for producing materials for books, newspapers, and record keeping. Something the church, if you don't know, has always been very keen on. But as good as things can seem sometimes, the mill's history aptly shows us how good things don't always last forever. A series of unfortunate events would soon embroil the company, the building, and those who worked there in a long-standing mire of difficulty and frustration. Over the years, there have been numerous accidents, some documented well and others only rumored. But it's safe to say that given the number of reports of strange occurrences, the ruined shell of the once fruitful mill could very well be haunted. And that's what I would like to find out. After an impressive run with no significant issues for nearly 10 years, the Deseret News paper mill, as it was called at the time, fell on hard financial times, and ultimately the building was sold to the Granite Paper Mill Company in 1892. A year later, early in 1893, Leander Butler was working in the mill when suddenly a bright, white flash burst across his face. He threw up his hands to block the searing light, but it was too late, and he fell backwards, yelling out in agony, his face and hands badly burned and disfigured. It was a short circuit in an electrical box, resulting in an arc blast, and Leander just happened to be right next to it when it went off. Although this incident didn't prove fatal, it set off a series of devastating events for Leander. Shortly afterwards, he was involved in an incident that crushed his shin bone, and then years later, another electrical accident would ultimately take his life. This would set in motion a series of troubling events for the mill as well that would ultimately contribute to its fateful decline. Shortly after Leander's initial accident, and in the last week of March of 1893, the mill happily reported the best numbers it had in its history, producing tons of surplus paper. Unfortunately, at this time, however, the roads were soft and transportation to and from the mill was difficult. So at the time, George Lambert, the manager on duty, just ordered his employees to stack the surplus paper in the open areas of the mill where it wouldn't normally go, but there wasn't anywhere else for it to go, to be stored. They would just do this until the roads were more accommodating for transport. Thinking little of this seemingly small inconvenience and wanting to celebrate their great success, Lambert told his 30-something employees to take a long weekend. Little did he know, however, that the consequences of that decision would potentially save dozens of lives, but paradoxically, given the circumstances, it may have also ruined many of them. Friday, March 31st, 1893. Well, the mill's employees were happily enjoying their day off, and the mill sat loaded to the brim with freshly pressed paper. Something devastating was being set in motion. The sun went down that Friday evening over the mill as it had every day prior, and Mr. Ayers, the night watchman, made his rounds, and finding nothing out of the ordinary, eventually settled in the attic of the mill for the night. Midnight came and went, and all was well. And then, around the fateful hour of 3 a.m., Mr. Ayers was jolted awake by the sound of crackling flames. The smell of smoke filled his nostrils. The mill and its surplus of paper was on fire. Ayers was able to make it out, and he called Lambert, who arrived at the scene as quickly as possible, along with Nathan Staker, who had to journey from Salt Lake City. Although there were people closer to the mill who could have helped put it out. Ultimately, the fire went unquelled, burning throughout the night, because few showed up to help. And Mr. Ayers, the poor night watchman's feeble lone attempts proved fruitless, and by the time Lambert and Staker made it to the scene, it was already nearly a complete loss. But why did so few show up to help? Normally, even in the middle of the night, communities would rally to help in an emergency situation. But on this night, no one came, because as emergency bells sounded throughout the town, many heard them, turned back over in bed, ignoring them, and went back to sleep. Most thought it was a joke, being the morning of the 1st of April. The cause of the fire went unknown, but it's not unlikely that it was another electrical fire, and it ultimately proved devastating, destroying nearly all of the equipment in the building and most of the paper. The insurance on the mill wouldn't cover the full damages, and operations were halted to a dead stop. Employees were let go, the business never recovered, and people's livelihoods were ruined. Not to mention, it was a devastating blow to the restored Church of Jesus Christ. And Nathan Staker, the man who came with Lambert, was severely injured attempting to put the fire out. This injury would stay with him for the remainder of his life, constantly reminding him of the night that no one showed up to save the mill. The mill sat as a hollow, burned-out shell for decades. A ghost of a once booming operation, the lifeblood of a community, continually haunting the locals for generations. It passed through the hands of many different owners, each having less success with the property than the previous one. People struggled with the building so much so that in 1927, the publisher of the Deseret News, Wendell Ashton, said the mill was born in travail and it lived through trial. Little did he know that his words were a mere foreboding of what was still to come. Years would go by and the place became a haven for the homeless, especially on cold nights. In fact, it was reported that a homeless family, along with their dog, took up residence in the stone structure at one point, and it appeared to suit their needs for a period of time. But unfortunately, another fire broke out. And although not well documented, it's said that this man and woman and their dog were trapped and burned alive inside the stony structure as if it were an oven. Another story reports of a shooting that happened on the property of a teenager who was trying to break in and explore. He was shot in the back while running away. Other stories are prevalent, some documented, others just rumors. Decades more went by and it sat abandoned. And eventually in 1969, the structure was rebuilt and turned into a dance hall where many early rock groups played, most notably Alice Cooper. And on one Sunday evening, the police raided the hall in an attempt to arrest people for what? Dancing on Sunday. It sounds humorous to us that would even be a thing, but at the time, dancing on Sundays was illegal and seen as a direct affront to the religiously minded folk. And it actually wasn't long after this raid that a night watchman, whether struggling with his own demons or possessed by the long-standing tumultuous spirit of the building, is said to have killed himself in front of his helpless wife, who ran from the property, horrified. In 1971, the site was placed on the National Registry of Historic Places, and it went through a number of different phases in kind of a strange purgatory-like limbo. It even was turned into an actual haunted house attraction in the 80s and made an appearance in a few movies, including SLC Punk and even Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. And then in 2005, it was officially condemned by the city of Cottonwood Heights, and it sits there in ruins to this day. And to this day, people still report strange things happening on the property. But the question remains, are any of the ghostly stories true? Or is it all just the vivid imagination of a community long embroiled in the complex and downtrodden history of this site? Well, that's what I want to find out. I believe that this site would be an ideal spot to do an on-site investigation. I mean a real investigation, one with a team, cameras, lights, laser grids, digital recorders, and other equipment. But I'd like to do it legally. I've read that there are those who would eventually like to restore it and turn it into a museum, which I think would be amazing. How brilliant would it be to open up the place as a center for art, culture, and history, all distilled together into the bruised ground, potentially bringing some closure to its troubled past, while resurrecting the site into a beautiful new state of existence. So my next step is I'd like to reach out to some people and see if we can't work something out and potentially set up a GoFundMe to restore this remarkable piece of Utah history, and maybe in the process rub some elbows and get into the place with some ghost hunting equipment. Let me know if you would like to see this happen. I would love to do that, and I will keep you updated if I can find anyone who can help make this a possibility. And if you're watching this right now and you know how to help, please share this video and contact me at themoonlitghost@gmail.com. So stay tuned, and we will see if we can't bring some peace to those restless spirits, or at least have a good scare in the meantime. Make sure to like and subscribe. Turn on those notifications. Stay tuned for my Marble Mountain Bigfoot investigation, and Let me know if you'd like to see the old paper mill restored and turned into a museum. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe out there, and most importantly, stay watching my videos, liking them, watching all the playlists, sharing them, and getting this to 100 likes. Most importantly, actually, stay paranormal. I love you guys. Peace.